I hope I'm in focus. Hey y'all, it's Michael and these are the books that I read in January. Normally this year I've been planning on uploading every Sunday and Thursday, so keep an eye out for my videos then at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Last Sunday I didn't post a video because here in the US it is Super Bowl Sunday and for some they consider it a holiday. I'm gonna split this video up into two parts because it might be long. It actually will be long. So alright, the first book that I listened to was The Outpost, An Untold Story of American Valor by Jake Taper, narrated by Rob Shapiro. This is about the outpost in 2009, outpost Keaton near Pakistan. It was an outpost basically by the US government and it was described as like being in a fishbowl because what happened essentially is, so like here's the outpost. There were mountains surrounding it like in a, like at the bottom of like a fishbowl type of situation. And basically it was easy for insurgents to attack the camp also. A taper accounts of like why that outpost was located there and how the name became to be Outpost Keaton. It also talks about the chain of command and how higher ups in the chain of command essentially has a lot of power and a lot of hold on how things are executed, because like even though the soldiers when they were there were saying like this is a bad location to be because like it's so easy, literally it was so easy for insurgents to attack them because they were so surrounded by these mountains. But I think my favorite part about this novel that I enjoyed so much is that Taper really focuses on the soldiers, because the book actually takes, like, it actually follows these soldiers as they go in and out of the outposts during their tours, so like different times when they come in and out of the outpost. The book is so grounded that the stories are actually about the individual soldiers themselves. I am gonna let you know now, this book, it's really heartbreaking. As you know, I listen to a lot of audiobooks at work, and there were times when I had to stop the audiobook and it was just like, wow, because it's so heartbreaking, like finding out the stories, like their stories are so, it's just really heartbreaking. One of my book club members, and I was telling her about the book. I was like, I'm enjoying it so much, but it's so sad. And I was telling her that I was like, I think it's so sad and it's so important for you, like I think it's so insightful, but I wouldn't recommend it to her in the sense that it might like really break her down, because I live in a military town, and the military here is like, there's a lot of military people here. It can be scary thinking about like what happened to these brave men and women that's over there protecting our country, and finding out like actually listening to it, or like reading it, I guess reading it and listening to it is just so, it's really heartbreaking. Taper decides to do that because it brings a lot of humanity to the novel. The only thing though is that this book, it does, since it's about the soldiers, it does jump around a lot, and so it can feel disjointed at times. The story actually jumps from like when they're in Pakistan, and then it would actually jump back to like how their mothers, their wives, their sister, their families doing while they're stationed there. And it's so heartbreaking. Like imagine having to open your door and finding out that something happened to your loved ones. It's just so, it's really heartbreaking. He wanted to be as realistic as possible, but with him being realistic, it does get really violent. But yes, I would recommend it. I gave it 4.5 out of 5. I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. The next book that I listened to is The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon, narrated by Bonmi Turpin, Raymond Lee, and Dominic Hoffman. This is a YA contemporary love story. Essentially it's a love story, like that's what it is. And so I was kind of hesitant going into it because it was essentially like a love story, but I quite enjoyed it actually. This is about Natasha, who is Jamaican, and it takes place in New York, and basically her family is about to get deported. And during this time we also meet Daniel, who is a Korean, and he is going to an interview for college, and the book is basically how these two characters meet while Natasha's trying to get the papers so they won't get deported. Having to deal with my own personal immigration issues recently, like in my own life, you know, it's really scary having that thought of like, oh, we about to get deported. Like it's a really scary thought. Trust me, it's a really scary thought. Like your heart almost jumped a little bit. But I think my favorite part about this novel is the writing, because it switches perspectives, and we get, because it's essentially while it's these two characters, we also get to see like things going on around them, because the perspective switches and we get these little nuggets and like these little informative moments. It's just so insightful, because there are parts in here that I was like, wow, that's so cool. Like it's so cool and like so good. Like the part where it talks about like the history of hair, I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. So I really enjoyed it. I also enjoyed because while I'm not Korean, I am Asian, and a lot of the things that Daniel experiences, I can really relate back to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. Like I was having those moments. I gave it a 3.5. I think I gave it 3 on 3 out of 5 on Goodreads, but I really enjoyed it. The next book that I physically read was Don DeLillo's White Noise. I've never read a Don DeLillo's novel before, so this is my first one, and it was so funny, weird. Like it was a lot of emotions going on at the same time. This book is really hard to describe on like the plot, because for me this was a book that wasn't necessarily about like plot. Let me put that. It wasn't necessarily about like plot. It was more about the themes that it talks about. This is about a family. We follow mainly Jack, who's dad, Gladly. That's their last name, the Gladly family, and it's kind of like, it felt to me like it was the 80s, 60s, like 70s, around there, and Jack is a college professor at a university in Middle America, and he teaches Hitler studies. I'm sorry if I keep laughing because it's really funny. Basically, this cloud forms over the town, like called white noise. It's basically like the accumulation of things from like microwaves, antennas, things like that, and apparently it's really toxic. And so we follow the family as they experience this white noise going on. I think what I really enjoyed about it is that like I said, it is funny, but within like each chapter, it's so thematically poignant. Like it's so strong on the themes that it's trying to present, while overhead it's really about this family trying to survive, and it's so funny. Like there are parts about like consumerism that I was laughing. I was like, oh my god, it's really funny. And I think this is one of those books where me and you, hey friend, will get different things out of it, like separately, and I think that's such a great, like I really enjoy it when books do that, because if I reread this again, I feel as though, like, since I know how it's gonna turn out, it's gonna be really different again, and I feel like as I'm gonna get more out of it. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but his fourth wife, that's his current wife, Babette, she has one of the themes that she encompasses and like it's really strong about is about death, and it was so great. But yeah, I would recommend it. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. The next book that I listened to was In the Woods by Tana French, narrated by Stephen Crossley. Y'all, I had the highest expectations for this, because this book gets a lot of praise by it's written really like well, and so I was going into it thinking like, oh my god, this is gonna be so good. And yeah, there's that. So this is about the Dublin Murder Squad. Essentially, this is the first book of the Dublin Murder Squad series. We follow our main character Ryan. See, the thing about this book is that it has two plots essentially going towards the same goal, in a way, I guess you could say. So that we have this plot with the main character Ryan, and then it's also about him and his team, his partner Maddox, trying to solve the murder of a little girl that's been found. And so we follow them as they try to solve this mystery. I knew, let me tell you, I know that I'm not enjoying an audiobook I'm not enjoying an audiobook when I want to speed it up. And I wanted to speed this up so many times. I was like, oh, it's such a slog. This book, first off, it's so long, it's overdrawn. And at the point I was just like, oh my god, can we just solve this already? And the whole time I kept thinking to myself, I was like, why am I not enjoying this? And so, because in case you don't know, I love mysteries. Growing up, I used to devour Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys. Agatha Christie was my favorite mystery novelist growing up. I was like hardcore Agatha Christie. I was probably too young to be reading Agatha Christie at that age, but I loved it. I love trying to solve it. It's like a game almost, where the author has something set up and I'm trying to solve it. The whole time I was listening to this, I kept thinking to myself, I was like, why am I not enjoying this? And then it clicked in my head and I was like, oh, that's why. This book is not fun. Because those books that I'm thinking of, like Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot, Miss Marple, those characters, Sherlock, those characters, when I am reading them or watching them on screen, there's this fun about it. There's this fun of trying to chase the killer, trying to solve it, and this book did not have it. In my opinion, compared to other books that I have, other mysteries, the conclusion to this is kind of it's almost so basic that I was like, it didn't have that excitement when I reached the end, that I got or oh come on, we can catch the killer type of thing. It did not have that, and I think that's what I look for when I'm reading or listening to a mystery novel, that there's this fun. And this book almost felt as if we were a real detective and we had to fill out the paperwork that was required after we solved the mystery and turn it into our supervisor, because they had to read it and sign it off and stuff like that. And I gave it 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I just didn't like it. I don't know if you can see it on here, but I like to take notes when I read, so look at this on Jam on the Vine. There's a whole bunch of notes on here. At one point in the woods, you could see it right here. It's this big, huge, ugh. I was just over it. But yeah, I gave it 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The writing was okay, so there's that. Alright, like I said, I'm gonna split this in 2 parts because it is getting really long. So in the next part 2, I'm going to talk about Jam on the Vine, Buck, and White Trash, the 400 years untold history of class in America. So yeah, if you read any of these books I mentioned, let me know what you think about it. Until then, I'll see you guys till next time. Bye!